El ruso Vladimir Putin dicen que no aceptan esas sanciones y que las relaciones bilaterales se están desarrollando de manera muy positiva, en especial durante el día de hoy que se han llevado a cabo esas conversaciones. Dice que hoy van a tener esa oportunidad de poder reafirmar en detalle todos esos asuntos. Además, dice que a Bruno Rodríguez le complace estar en Moscú, con Moscú, las relaciones que están siendo ya sembradas desde hace años, desde todo el pasado. También dice que han estado en todos estos años trabajando duro, hombro con hombro, en la agenda internacional y, según ha subrayado Bruno Rodríguez, dice que las relaciones bilaterales son muy buenas y que están avanzando con proyectos comunes orientados a los beneficios del pueblo cubano. Para finalizar, también Bruno Rodríguez ha querido agradecer la solidaridad no solo de Vladimir Putin, sino de toda Rusia, y también le agradece a Putin esa amistad que a día de hoy continúa floreciendo. Pues nosotros que nos vamos directamente hasta Washington, D.C., donde está la secretaria de prensa de la Casa Blanca, Caroline Leavitt, que acaba de empezar a comparecer ante los medios.
Let's begin with some scheduling announcements for the remainder of President Trump's very busy week. Today at 3 p.m., President Trump will host a Black History Month reception in the East Room of the White House. I know many of you will attend, and we will see you up there. Tomorrow, President Trump will host a Board of Peace meeting at the Donald J. Trump Institute of Peace, where he will announce that member states have pledged more than $5 billion towards the Gaza humanitarian and reconstruction efforts, and have also committed thousands of personnel to the International Stabilization Force and local police to maintain security and peace for Gazans. Tomorrow afternoon, the president will travel to the great state of Georgia, where he will visit 2 local businesses and give a speech on his efforts to make life affordable for working people. On Friday, President Trump will host a working breakfast with governors in the East Room here at the White House. And on Saturday night, President Trump and the First Lady will host the annual Governor's Dinner. Next, I'd like to provide an update on the economy. We're seeing promising signs every day that 2026 is going to be a record successful year for the American people, just as President Trump promised them. The January jobs report shattered expectations, highlighting how the president's pro-growth economic agenda is fueling American prosperity. The economy added 172,000 new private sector jobs to kick off the year. That's more than 2.5 times economists' predictions. The labor force participation rate went up while the unemployment rate fell. The prime age labor force participation rate is now at its highest since 2001. Most importantly, 100% of all job creation under President Trump continues to be in the private sector. This is truly remarkable. That's 615,000 private sector jobs that have been added in President Trump's second term thus far. These are real working people. These are real American families who will be living out their American dream. Meanwhile, federal government employment has shrunk to its lowest level since 1966, saving taxpayers $29 billion annually. And all of the net job growth under President Trump has gone to native-born Americans, ending the disgraceful pattern under Joe Biden of job gains going to non-citizens and illegal aliens. Additionally, on inflation, the new CPI report is even more proof of the progress made by President Trump. Despite all of the doom casting from the so-called experts, the president has managed to utilize powerful tariffs to secure trillions of dollars in investments into our country and rebalance our trade deals while simultaneously cooling inflation. Year-over-year inflation fell to 2.4% in January, beating expectations again and marking the lowest level since May. Core inflation, the best measure of inflation, dropped to its lowest level in nearly 5 years. Meanwhile, real average hourly earnings for all private sector workers rose in the month of January, which means more money is going back directly into people's pockets. After only 1 year of President Trump back in office, real earnings for all private sector workers have outpaced inflation by nearly $1,400, earning back roughly half of the $2,900 they lost under Joe Biden when 40-year high inflation was stealing Americans' purchasing power. President Trump's policies are and will continue to allow Americans' incomes to go further for bills, retirement, and achieving the American dream. A key part of the American dream is buying a home. And that is finally becoming more affordable under this president. This past week, it was announced the annual mortgage cost for a new home has fallen by $4,000 so far under President Trump, after rising by roughly $15,000 under Joe Biden. As a result, mortgage affordability has reached a 4-year best, following recent bold action by the president to make home ownership more attainable for American families, not large Wall Street corporate institutional investors. At the same time, national median rents have fallen to a 4-year low and have declined for 6 consecutive months. The annual rental cost for a new rental unit has fallen nearly $100 so far under President Trump, after rising more than $3,000 under Joe Biden. And many are crediting that to the president's deportation efforts to remove illegal aliens from our communities and therefore from housing that should be used for American citizens. At the grocery store, the price of eggs, dairy, cheese, fresh fruit, apples, oranges, potatoes, tomatoes, and butter have fallen since President Trump took office, and he is continuing to fight for even lower prices at the grocery store for the American consumer. At the gas pump, fuel prices are down by almost 10% over the past year. The average national price for a gallon of regular gas is now less than $3 and is approaching $2.70 in some states, and much lower than that in many states across the country as well. We've seen in several states gas is under $2 a gallon.
Pues además de escuchar al presidente de Estados Unidos en las últimas veces, que también hacía referencia al positivismo que está recibiendo Estados Unidos en cuanto a la economía, baja la inflación y Caroline Levitt lo acaba de decir, están obteniendo los mejores resultados desde mayo del año pasado. La Casa Blanca además afirma que han conseguido más de $5 millones en fondos destinados para Gaza. Vamos a seguir escuchando a la Secretaría de Prensa.
That we are about to witness, and I know the president looks forward to hitting the road and being with the great people of Georgia tomorrow to talk about just this. So with that, today, I know there's a lot of news. I will open it up to take your questions, and we're going to start, as always, with our new media seat, the great Michael Graham from Inside Sources. Thank you for being here, Michael.
Thank you for having us, and thanks from our 200 newspaper partners around the country. So you mentioned gas. We didn't mention natural gas. And back where you live, your friends and family are paying among the highest prices for natural gas to heat their home and for electricity generation, the #1 source of power across New England. The cheap gas is in Pennsylvania. The 2 highest places to buy gas in the country, New York City and Boston. The problem is the blue states will not allow the gas to travel to produce electricity or to reach customers. When President Trump first came back in office, there was some talk, him and Governor Hochul in New York possibly reaching a deal. When will consumers in the Northeast feel relief from President Trump's energy policies, and what can he do about state objections to expansion of infrastructure? Then I have a quick follow-up.
Sure, absolutely. Well, the president has promised all Americans across the country, and in particular in the Northeast, where we do face much higher costs of electricity and of energy, unfortunately, because of the Democrat policies in the area. From the federal government's perspective, the president and the National Energy Dominance Council, Secretaries Wright and Burgum, are doing all we can when it comes to federal permitting. The drill, baby, drill agenda is obviously underway. The president has made a huge push for more fossil fuels in this country. You look at what he did last week with respect to coal. Coal truly keeps the lights on in this country. We learned that in the recent winter storms. However, there's only so much that can be done at the federal level. That's why the president has called on blue state governors to participate in this energy dominance agenda, including governors in New England and the Northeast, by contacting Governor Hochul directly to get this Constitution pipeline underway. This is not only going to bring down the cost of energy in the Northeast, it's also going to support job growth and energy affordability and more opportunity for workers in the Northeast. And I just have a quick statistic here on energy that I found fascinating, and it's obviously true because I'm saying it up here. Red states with Republican legislatures currently enjoy lower average retail electricity prices than blue states with Democrat legislatures. And that's exactly why the president is calling on all blue state governors across New England and the Northeast to get on board. Let's bring prices down for all Americans, whether they live in a red or a blue state.
So right down the street from your alma mater, San Antonio College, you talk about building an ICE facility that's causing a lot of political agita in New Hampshire, and for the Republican governor, Kelly Ayotte. Seems to be some miscommunications argued on both sides. Even Republican supporters of Trump who live in the town say, we're not sure we want this. What's your message to the folks in New Hampshire about this proposed ICE facility?
The message is that illegal immigration, while the border is secure, is still a problem across our entire homeland. And the previous administration allowed nearly 20 million illegal aliens from countries all over the world into our country. And the president and Secretary Noem have done a phenomenal job at deporting. Nearly 3 million illegals have left the country either through deportation or self-deportation over the past year. But obviously, there are a lot more illegal alien criminals left in our homeland. That includes in New England. There are many within our communities in New Hampshire, in Maine, and definitely in Massachusetts and in the Boston suburbs that need to be arrested, detained, and deported back to their home countries. And so the president and Secretary Noem, and I know ICE, are engaged with local governors across the whole country, including in New Hampshire, to open more detention facilities. This is an unfortunate consequence of the previous administration's border invasion that the president has thankfully put a stop to. But of course, we still need to grapple with the illegal alien criminals who are here, and that requires more detention space. Thank you, Michael. Garrett.
On Iran, I'm not asking you for like military secrets here, but can you share?
I would be so unwise.
Unless you want to give them. Can you share a little bit about the president's thinking on whether or not to strike Iran, who he's talking to, what information he's consuming, and why a strike might be necessary on a nuclear program he says was obliterated by the last U.S. strike?
Well, there's many reasons and arguments that one could make for a strike against Iran. The president had a very successful operation as commander-in-chief with Operation Midnight Hammer, as you know, as you just said, totally obliterated Iran's nuclear facilities. The president has always been very clear, though, with respect to Iran or any country around the world, diplomacy is always his first option, and Iran would be very wise to make a deal with President Trump and with this administration. He's talking to many people, of course, his national security team, first and foremost, and you know who the members of that team are. And this is something, obviously, the president takes seriously. He's always thinking about what's in the best interest of the United States of America, of our military, of the American people. And that's how he makes decisions with respect to military action of any kind.
And on the flip side of that, he's got the State of the Union speech next week. If he is going to take military action, does the administration believe...
Bueno, pues le acaban de preguntar sobre la tensión entre Irán y Estados Unidos y según acaba de confirmar la Secretaría de Prensa de la Casa Blanca, dice que Irán sería sabio si llegara a un acuerdo con Estados Unidos, que el presidente estadounidense Donald Trump se lo está tomando muy en serio y que va a hacer siempre lo que sea mejor para el pueblo estadounidense. Además, Leavitt ha dicho que se podrían establecer muchos argumentos a favor de un ataque contra Irán.
Ed.
Carolyn, thank you. I got two questions for
Sure.
you. About Independence Hall in Philadelphia, the administration's decided to appeal a judge's ruling that in essence was trying to put the slavery displays back, arguing that the federal government believed it had the power to disassemble and disassemble historical truths when it has some domain over historical facts. The judge said it does not. The administration said that you were planning to put up updated interpretive materials and provide a fuller account of the history of slavery at Independence Hall. What more was the administration or is the administration planning to add?
I'm not familiar with this specific instance, Ed, to be honest with you, but I will check in with the appropriate people who are overseeing this, and we'll get you a more firm answer.
One other question. Then yesterday in his statement about Jesse Jackson, the president said, despite the fact that I'm falsely and consistently called a racist by the scoundrels and lunatics on the radical left, Democrats all, it was always my pleasure to help Jesse along the way. Where or when does the president believe he's been falsely called racist?
You're kidding, right?
No.
I will pull you plethora of examples. I'm going to get my team in that room to start going through the internet of radical Democrats throughout the years, Ed, who have accused this president falsely of being a racist. And I'm sure there's many people in this room and on network television across the country who have accused him of the same. In fact, I know that because I've seen it with my own eyes. And the president very much looks forward to having an event later this afternoon at 3 p.m. to celebrate Black History Month and to talk about how his policies are advancing opportunity and prosperity for all Americans through record tax cuts through the Trump accounts that all Americans can access regardless of race. These are a great thing for the next generation of Americans. The president has also awarded hundreds of millions of dollars in additional funding to strengthen educational outcomes at historically Black colleges and universities across the country. Again, the president is protecting the hard-earned benefits of the 2.4 million Black veterans who honorably served in our nation's armed forces by reducing the backlog of veterans waiting for their VA benefits and for their home loans through the Department of Veterans Affairs. So there is a lot this president has done for all Americans, regardless of race, and he has absolutely been falsely called and smeared as a racist, and I'm happy to provide you those receipts, and we gladly will right after this briefing. Jennifer, go ahead.
You mentioned the $5 billion in pledges for the Board of Peace. Will we be able to get a breakdown of which countries are providing each of those pledges?
Yes.
And which countries are providing troops?
Sure. We're happy to provide that breakdown. And I'm also happy to provide the list of countries that will be attending tomorrow. I know it's more than 20 countries. I know there's a lot of interest in that. I'll spare myself reading you the list of 20 countries from the podium, but we will provide it. And the president will be opening the meeting tomorrow with remarks and will sort of formally be chairing the meeting at the beginning before he departs for Georgia tomorrow.
The sewage spill, the sewage pipe that broke on Potomac. Can you give us an update on the federal government's response?
Bueno, pues la secretaria de prensa, Caroline Leavitt, confirma que mañana Donald Trump hablará ante los medios para poder detallar algo más en profundidad lo que acababa de confirmar Caroline Leavitt, que más de 5 millones de dólares han sido conseguidos para los fondos para Gaza, según los miembros de la Junta de Paz, que ya han prometido esa cuantía, más de 5.000 millones de dólares para la ayuda humanitaria y los esfuerzos de reconstrucción de Gaza, y que escucharemos esas palabras con más detalle por parte del presidente antes de mañana cuando llegue a Georgia. Seguimos escuchando a Caroline Leavitt.
The federal government can go and take control of this local infrastructure that has been abandoned and neglected by Governor Moore in Maryland for far too long. In fact, it's no secret that Maryland's water and infrastructure have been in dire need of repair. Their infrastructure has received a nearly failing grade in the 2025 report card from the American Society of Civil Engineers. This is the same grade they've received 5 years earlier. There has been no improvement under the leadership of Governor Moore. He's clearly shown he's incapable of fixing this problem, which is why President Trump and the federal government are standing by to step in. And for all of the environmentalists in the room and across the District of Columbia, let's all hope and pray that this governor does the right thing and ask President Trump to get involved, because it will be an ecological and environmental disaster if the federal government does not step in to help. But of course, we need the state and local jurisdictions to make that formal request. That's part of the legal process to move forward. Peter.
So you said that any of the three Democrats just need to ask. A few minutes ago, Maryland's Governor Wes Moore asked. He said, if the president wants me to ask nicely, our response is this: please, Mr. President, do your job.
To which I say, I'll ask the president and we will provide you with the next steps. But in all seriousness, the federal government has been preparing plans. The White House has been in contact with FEMA, with the Army Corps of Engineers, with the Environmental Protection Agency. Again, we've been standing by. This is a problem we want to fix, not just for the federal government, but for everyone who lives in the District of Columbia, including all of you. So you're welcome.
To your point about that, there are a lot of events coming up for America 250. The president wants people from all over to come to the nation's capital. Is he worried that by the summer, the Potomac River will still smell like poop?
He is worried about that, which is why the federal government wants to fix it. And we hope that the local authorities will cooperate with us in doing so. Steve.
What will the $5 billion be used for in Board of Peace? And will that be sort of a down payment for much more money?
You'll be hearing more about that tomorrow at the meeting. If you recall, at the first meeting when we were in Davos, Jared Kushner did provide a very detailed PowerPoint presentation for the vision of Gaza, the reconstruction and the humanitarian efforts, of course, providing local security on the ground. That will be part of the discussion tomorrow, is how can we maintain security? First, you must achieve security to get to prosperity, which is sort of the second part of this plan. So you'll be hearing more about that tomorrow. But I would just point out, $5 billion worth of investment. We're talking about reconstructing Gaza. I remember when those words came from the president's lips in the East Room many months ago, and all of you in the press were bewildered at how the president could have such an ambitious goal of rebuilding Gaza, which is obviously a place that has been just turmoiled by violence and chaos for many, many years. But we are well underway in doing that, and it's a historic accomplishment for this president.
Secondly, is the president seeing enough progress in the Iran talks to let negotiations go a little further? I mean, where do things stand after yesterday's talks?
I think you heard from the administration and the State Department yesterday that there was a little bit of progress made, but we're still very far apart on some issues. I believe the Iranians are expected to come back to us with some more detail in the next couple of weeks. And so the president will continue to watch how this plays out. Sure.
Follow up on that. Thank you, Caroline. On these Iran talks, I mean, how much time is the president willing to give it before he is seriously maybe considering military action? Is he willing to give it that full 2 weeks? And has he given the Iranian officials a deadline on when he wants to see a deal?
It's a fair question, Rachel, but I'm not going to set deadlines on behalf of the president of the United States.
And then just one more on the shutdown. We're now in this partial shutdown over DHS funding. Has the president personally spoken to the Democratic leaders in Congress? Can we expect to see them at the White House to try to make a deal on this?
Not to my knowledge, he hasn't had any direct conversation or correspondence with Democrat lawmakers recently. It doesn't mean he's not willing to. I'm just not aware of any conversations that have taken place. I do know the White House and the president's representatives have been in direct conversations with both Democrats and Republicans. But of course, Democrats are the reason that the Department of Homeland Security is currently shut down. They have chosen to act against the American people for political reasons. And now we have FEMA workers, the men and women of the United States Coast Guard, men and women of TSA who keep our airports moving, who will be working without paychecks for no good reason other than the Democrats wanting to pick a fight with Donald Trump. And the president thinks that is irresponsible and despicable. He wants the government to be open. We've been engaged in good faith negotiations with the Democrats. Last night, they sent over a counter proposal that frankly was very unserious, and we hope they get serious very soon because Americans are going to be impacted by this. Sure.
Thanks, Caroline. President Trump has talked about a forthcoming executive order on voter ID. Is there more details you can provide about for that? And can you talk about any steps that you're taking to overcome court challenges that you've kind of faced in this area before voting?
Well, as the
Acaban de preguntar a Caroline Levitt sobre el cierre parcial del gobierno federal de Estados Unidos. Se vuelve a repetir este suceso y dice que Trump de momento no ha tenido ninguna conversación directa con los legisladores demócratas sobre el cierre parcial del gobierno estadounidense, pero dice que sin duda alguna los demócratas son los culpables y la razón por la que actualmente está parcialmente cerrado el gobierno federal, y dice que el presidente Donald Trump cree que es irresponsable y despreciable e incluso que estarán negociando en las próximas horas con los demócratas.
Have an ID to vote in our nation's elections, and I know the vast majority of Americans agree with him on that, and he wants Congress to move quickly to get it done.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
On Cuba, it's increasingly being described as a humanitarian crisis. What is a successful outcome for the U.S. that the U.S. wants to see in Cuba? Is there anything less than regime change that would be considered success?
I think, as Secretary Rubio has articulated and the president himself, we obviously want to see flourishing and prosperous democracies all over the world, especially in our own hemisphere. I'm not dictating any actions the United States may take to get there, but of course, that's in the United States' best interest to have Cuba be a truly free and prosperous democracy. Unfortunately, right now, that is not the case. They are a regime that is falling. Their country is collapsing, and that's why we believe it's in their best interest to make very dramatic changes very soon, and we'll see what they decide to do. Sure.
Much. Following up on Gaza, this $5 billion, who exactly will be in charge of managing this money? Would that be the president himself making the final decisions on how these funds are spent?
It will be the Board of Peace, which the president is, of course, the chairman of, but all of the member parties, I believe, will have votes on the funding. And then, of course, there is that technocratic layer underneath the official Board of Peace with the member countries that will be making decisions as well. So if you just go back and look at the first event that we had where we sort of unveiled the structure of the Board of Peace, that structure remains in place, and they'll be overseeing the funds that will be announced tomorrow for their reconstruction and humanitarian efforts. Sure.
Another question on that Board of Peace announcement. You mentioned there will be the announcement of who comprises that international stability force. How soon will that force be deployed? And have all of the regional partners, all of the regional countries signed off on the makeup of that force?
I don't have a timeline for you today, but again, I'm sure you'll hear more about this tomorrow. So you'll join us at the event. Deanna.
Thanks, Caroline. Two questions.
Sure.
First, the president has talked a lot about housing affordability, and several countries that are facing housing shortages, including Canada, for example, have imposed a ban on non-citizens, like foreigners, from buying their houses. Do you know if that's a strategy that the president would be willing to deploy?
Well, first of all, the president is obviously committed to deporting illegal aliens from our country and those who are not lawfully present in the United States, which he has done at a record pace, which has led to the falling of rents, as I pointed out in my opening remarks. Secondly, the president has recently announced that he is fighting for a ban on institutional investors and Wall Street billionaire corporations from buying up single-family homes that should be lived in his opinion, by American families. We know this is going to have a remarkable impact on the housing market and on prices and supply and demand for the American consumer and the American family. And then thirdly, the president is also expediting permitting as fast as we possibly can to build more homes, to increase supply, to obviously bring down the cost of home ownership and purchasing homes for the American people. And then also, as I mentioned as well, we do see mortgage rates falling. So all of this is combining to make housing more affordable in this country. There's still a lot more to do. The president is still digging his way out of the mess that was created by Joe Biden's administration and jacking up mortgage rates and jacking up housing costs. But we do see very positive trends in this direction. And the president wants the United States to be a nation of owners, not renters. He wants families to live in homes, not institutions and big corporations. Michael.
Ukraine, Caroline. Secondly, on Ukraine,
Sure.
yesterday Zelensky said in an interview that he says that it's not fair that the president is saying that Ukraine has to make concessions. He's saying this publicly, and not Russia. Has the president seen these comments? And when the president says that Ukraine has to make concessions, is he referring to giving up Donbass?
I think the president would respond to that by saying he does not think it's fair that thousands of Ukrainians are losing their lives, and Russians too, in this deadly war. And that's why the president and his team have committed a tremendous amount of time and energy in bringing this war that is very far away from the United States of America, but nevertheless, this is a president of peace. And so he's committed a tremendous amount of time and energy to bringing this war to an end. Just yesterday, there was another round of trilateral talks between the U.S., Russia, and Ukraine. There was meaningful progress made in both parties. Both sides agreed to update their respective leaders and to continue to work towards a peace deal together. So there will be another round of talks in the future. But I think the president views this entire situation as very unfair, not just for Russians and Ukrainians who have lost their lives, but also for the American people and the American taxpayer who were footing the bill for this war effort before President Trump put a stop to it. And I would just remind everyone around the world that the United States is still selling weapons to NATO that are then being sent to Ukraine in their defense of their freedom in their borders. Michael.
Russia is reportedly joining Iran for joint naval exercises in the Gulf of Oman this week. Has the president issued any kind of warning to Russia or even China not to involve itself if the U.S. decides to strike Iran?
Not to my knowledge, no, or not that I would dictate from this podium. I wouldn't reveal the president's private conversations with world leaders. With respect to that, again, when it comes to Iran, the president has a decision to make, and he will do that. And I'm not going to broadcast what that decision may be ahead of him.
President Barack Obama, Caroline, was recently asked if aliens are real. He says they're real, but he hasn't seen them. The president's daughter-in-law, Lara Trump, told Miranda Devine of the New York Post that the president has a prepared speech on this issue that he prepares to deliver at the right time. Is that true? And does the Trump administration believe aliens are real?
Well, a speech on aliens would be news to me. That sounds very exciting, though. I'll have to check in with our speech writing team. And that would be of great interest to me personally, and I'm sure all of you in this room, and apparently former President Obama, too. So we'll keep you posted on that. Tyler.
The White House has touted an unprecedented amount of cooperation with counties in Minneapolis after the negotiations with Tom Homan. Are those written or verbal deals with the sheriff? how many have agreed to cooperate on immigration enforcement who previously refused to do so?
Yeah, the last time I spoke with Mr. Homan, which was just a few days ago, he assured us that nearly every single county in the state of Minnesota has agreed to notify ICE when they are releasing criminal illegal aliens from their jails. This is an unprecedented level of cooperation that we have not seen. It has led to not only cooperation to detain illegal aliens in Minnesota, which just this past week, I have looked at the list. They've detained some very heinous people who none of you would want living in your communities. But has also led to a much more calm situation on the ground. We've also seen, and you've seen this with your own eyes play out, the local police and the state police have now cooperated in the arrests of left-wing agitators and criminals who are unlawfully obstructing immigration enforcement in their efforts. So this is a huge win. And again, the president sent Mr. Homan to Minnesota to do a job, and he has done it well. And I think the situation on the ground proves that.
Are those like written agreements that they've been signed by various officials in the state?
These are agreements that have been made by state and local officials in the federal government, and we are seeing that cooperation play out every single day. These counties are notifying ICE when they are releasing criminal illegals from their jail, and we do know that they are arresting left-wing agitators who are unlawfully impeding law enforcement. There's video to show that. Show it yourself. You can view it with your own eyes. John.
Thank you, Caroline. You mentioned two things: DHS closed and the SAVE Act IDs. Both of these could get solved in 15 minutes.
Bueno, pues según estábamos escuchando las últimas palabras de Caroline Levitt, hace referencia a Cuba. Dice que debe hacer cambios dramáticos muy pronto antes de que sea demasiado tarde. Cuba, que ha estado reunida con Rusia durante el día de hoy, manteniendo esas conversaciones entre Bruno Rodríguez y Vladimir Putin. Parece que tienen esas buenas conversaciones durante el día de hoy, que han llegado a buen puerto, y según dice la secretaria de prensa, Caroline Levitt, cree que lo mejor para Cuba es hacer cambios más drásticos todavía y que sea, de momento, pues lo antes posible. Además, dice que ya está pendiente otra ronda de conversaciones con Ucrania en un futuro muy próximo y que ya se han logrado avances significativos en las conversaciones de ayer, esas conversaciones trilaterales entre Rusia, Ucrania y Estados Unidos. Vamos a seguir escuchando a Levi.
In your voice, and I know it's shared by many Americans across the country, including the president himself. He wants to see the SAVE Act voted, and he's expressed that both publicly to all of you, the American people, but also privately in his conversations with Senate Majority Leader Thune and many other members of Congress as well. Yes, Rob, go ahead. Good to see you.
So J.B. Pritzker just recently signed the bill. The law went into effect in January, and it's supposedly going to allocate about $2.5 billion to illegals to go to college and financial aid in the state of Illinois. What is the White House's reaction to this? Illinois is already, by 2027, they're supposed to have a $3 billion deficit. What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, we'll have to take a look at that. I would say the president certainly thinks that Governor Pritzker is not doing a very good job of managing his state, as evidenced by not only the waste, fraud, and abuse, but also the crime in the city of Chicago that unfortunately Governor Pritzker has refused to pick up the phone and call the White House and ask for help on, which is something his residents want him to do, but he refuses to do for political reasons. As for the specific money, we'll take a look and get you an answer. You're welcome. John.
Thanks a lot, Caroline. Two questions. One is about the president's trip to Georgia tomorrow. If you can provide some additional information about that, why Northwest Georgia was chosen for this particular trip, for instance.
Sure. Well, Georgia is obviously a very important state to the president and to the Republican Party, and the president loves the people of Georgia. He'll be touring, like I said, a steel facility, and then he'll also be stopping by another local business, and he will be giving remarks on affordability, on the economy, on all of the great economic news that I just shared with you earlier. He'll be meeting and greeting with everyday Americans, and that's what the president loves to do, to get out across the country. And he's spoken about his intention to go across the country a lot more, and obviously tomorrow's trip is evidence of that.
Secondly, last week, as you know, big